Hey, this is LOA Today, the Law of Attraction show. Welcome to LOA Today. My name is Walt Thiessen. Today is Friday, December 7th, 2012. With me today, David Bennett. I don't know how else to describe David except perhaps a miracle person, because he shouldn't be here, but he is, and he's about to tell us why he's still here and what he learned along the way. I'm not even going to give any hints about what his story is all about. I want him to tell it. So, David, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Walt. It's great to be here.
And I'm glad to have you here in more than one way, as our listeners will find out in a moment. You have had two of the most remarkable experiences people can have in life, what are often called near-death experiences. And without further ado, give us some highlights. Well, I can't call them highlights. Give us some, I guess there are some highlights in there, aren't there? Give us the highlights and whatever details you care to give us about them.
Sure. In 1983, I was the chief engineer of the research vessel Aloha, and in March of '83, we were returning from a job where we were evaluating some new submarines, and we were trying to beat a storm, and we didn't. And the harbor master wouldn't let us in, but the design engineer for one of the submarines we were evaluating needed to get into LAX. So the captain thought it'd be good to shuttle him in our Zodiac. I don't know if you know what a Zodiac is.
No, fill it in.
It's one of those rubber boats, like you see the Marines use to
right.
do beach landings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a very durable little craft, and we've been able to retrieve submarines in the open sea and 20, 30-foot seas with this Zodiac, so we weren't too concerned about it. And this night we had 25-foot seas. We started to come in. The captain actually asked me. I was the chief engineer. Normally I don't go on these boats, but because we were evaluating a sub, we didn't have our full crew on board, and I was third officer, so I knew the harbor better than most of the rest of the crew on board. So the captain thought it'd be good for me to accompany the boat in to help guide him into the harbor.
Sure.
Well, on our way in, we fell off a 25-foot wave crest, not just a swell, but a wave.
Wow.
We got blown off course. You can imagine, we would ride up on top of a swell, take a bearing on the harbor buoy, because we were 2 miles offshore when we started, and then we would, quickly run down the trough and up to the top of the next swell to get another bearing. And we were tried to stay on course for the harbor. But that didn't work out so well, because the harbor buoy was at the same time was doing the same thing. It was in more of a breaker zone where waves were crashing, and it was bobbing all over at the same time we were bobbing all over. So we quickly lost course, but we could always see the shoreline because that was just aglow,
Mm-hmm.
And so we just decided whatever happens, we'll just run into the beach. That would be the safest thing.
Okay.
But we didn't know it, but we were blown about a mile south of the harbor.
Ooh.
And in that area, there's a mile off the coast, there's a sandbar that creates an upswell from the ocean and creates this great surf that surfers love, because it's on the coast of California. But we ended up there, and we fell off a 25-footer in the blink of an eye, just
Wow.
that quick. And so I yelled to the mate to turn the Zodiac around, head back out to sea, because it would be safer out there. And just as we got it turned about, there was the next one, and it was right about, so you look up and all you see is this foam, and it just came crashing down on top of us, and it folded the Zodiac in half like a peanut butter sandwich.
Mm.
I was catapulted, because I was in the bow navigating, it catapulted me into the sea, and I'm being tumbled and tossed like a rag doll. But I'm a commercial diver. I've logged thousands of hours diving, and so I'm very comfortable in the water. I wasn't all that disturbed, because this night, for one of the few times we actually wore life vests, because we were a bunch of macho guys,
Well, life vests is only for the weaker souls.
No, this was our life, we lived our life at sea and stuff, so we very rarely wear life jackets. But this night, for some reason, thank the universe for guiding us to do that. But So I'm hanging on to the life vest, and it was one of those old World War II life vests, you know, the big puffy orange ones that look like giant pillows.
Right.
So I'm hanging on to that thinking, thank goodness I put this life vest on, because I was being tumbled and tossed and just thrashed around in this ocean. It was just so violent. I can't remember anything ever being so violent in my life. And so I'm just hanging on. But you can only hold your breath so long.
Right.
And eventually I drowned because it didn't bring me up to the surface. And I found myself in this absolute darkness at first. But this darkness was calm, it was peaceful, it was warm, it was comfortable. And I just died this violent death, you know, in this raging sea. And the sea, when it's raging like that, is loud. It's ferociously loud. And to be in this sudden calm and peace, and this darkness also, it was rich. It's hard to describe, you know, the rich vastness of they call this the void, but it was just the darkness to me, and because I didn't have any words for this at first, but there's like an omnipresent intelligence present within this rich void. So I didn't feel alone, and I wasn't scared. I know that many people that go through a darkness in this type of scenario can consider it very frightening. But because I think because I just died a very violent death, that I didn't see it that way. I found it very peaceful. And I was very curious because as a diver, we're trained to recognize the symptoms of oxygen deprivation because we're constantly aware of our environment.
Right.
So they train us in oxygen deprivation as commercial divers anyway. Scuba divers, I don't think, go through that. But I was curious. This is way beyond anything I was trained. And so I was observing, and suddenly a light appeared, and I was drawn to that light. You know, like you hear the moth to the flame type of thing. Well, it was very much like that. I was just drawn to this light. And I can't say that I was moving toward it or it was moving toward me. There was no tunnel for me. In fact, it's kind of funny. In near-death experience research that's been going on for over 30 years, the tunnel is only about 15 to 17% of experiencers actually experience a tunnel. That's misconception that Hollywood has kind of portrayed.
Yeah, they're good at that.
Yeah, they're good at throwing stuff in there. They glom onto an idea. But I was moving toward this light, and as I got closer, the vastness, the infinite vastness of this light became more and more apparent, because it just, as I would get closer and closer and closer, it just was bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it looked like millions of fragments of light that were all dancing and coalescing together, you know, and it was almost like they were breathing and alive and all interconnected together. And so I was fascinated by this light, and as I got closer, it was like this light started sending these waves of love that were just wrapping me.
Wow.
In this love, and it actually, the love was like permeating into my being, and it was transforming me into my own fragment of light. I became you could call it a light being, but I was transformed by this love that was emanating from the light into light. And so as my fragment approached, 3 other fragments broke away from the light and came toward me, and they greeted me. And this is where it gets hard for me. I still get choked up because they were my soul family. I call them my soul family because they weren't anybody that I recognized from living in this life, but they were beings that I had lived with before.
Okay.
And I have experienced lifetimes with before. And eventually a dozen of them came, and they were all greeting me. And the overwhelming message that they were conveying to me was welcome home.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just overwhelmed with this feeling that they were, emanating toward me. So they were welcoming me home. They were loving me, accepting me. And
if you had to apply a human emotion to what you felt in response to this interaction, what emotion would you apply to it?
It would be, a receptive love, that I was receiving and accepting this love with gratitude, because I had never felt that type of love before in my life.
Was it happy?
It was joyous.
It was joyous. That's actually the best kind of happiness, I think.
Yeah. It was because I had a pretty dysfunctional life prior to this experience, and I didn't have a sense of family, and so to suddenly find family, it was just overwhelming in a lot of ways. I mean, I was like open mouth gaga in awe of the entire experience, And we moved into the light together in group, together. It was almost like we were like connected, and we went into this area within the light that to me felt very spherical.
Spherical?
Yes. So three-dimensional, like a ball, inside the center of like a ball.
Okay.
And the light was surrounding this ball. Okay. This infinite light was just all around this ball. We were in the light. And then I started to relive my life, and it's called a life review. And it was reliving my life, but not through just my perspective of my life. I got to live it through everyone I'd ever interacted with, through their vision. I got to feel their emotions. I got to feel their love, their pain, everything. So it was, you saw your life from these multiple streams of consciousness. It was like your consciousness fragmented into all these multiple streams, and you got to observe it from all these different varying views.
That must be bizarre. That's the only word I can think of.
It's intense. And that's an understatement. In fact, it's so hard to convey this because this is so hyper real compared to what we experience here.
Right.
And not only was I experiencing it this way, but my entire soul family, we were all experiencing it this way. And if I had to attach an emotion to that, I would say that there was excitement, that they were able to view this. But I still was releasing my humanness in a way because I was ashamed of some of the stuff that I had done, because to become the chief engineer of a research vessel in your mid-20s, I was a pretty brash young man, and my philosophy was pretty brutal. It was, you cut your swath through life and you survive, and that was my philosophy in life. Mm-hmm. And which would be totally normal for someone who didn't have a family and hadn't felt a lot of love in their life and that sort of thing. And,
sure.
And isolated. So I mean, that was, to me, that's a survivalistic type of philosophy.
Right.
Well, you can imagine living my life that way. I stepped on a lot of toes. I was not a nice person. There were a lot of concepts in life that I just didn't quite grasp as far as, loving compassion and things like that. So I was ashamed of some of the stuff that my soul family had to experience but they didn't. They were not judging me whatsoever. They were just supporting me through this experience and love, and which was incredibly humbling. At this point, I can say that I was feeling incredibly humbled by their love, even in my darkest days. But also I noticed in this life review that whenever I did something with a loving intention, pure loving intention, no regard for, I wasn't looking for anything in life or anything like that, but I would do something for someone with loving intention, that would create these huge ripples of after effects. Because everything we do in life and every interaction we have in life, we create ripples and we create after effects and from our own actions and our own intentions. And so to watch this cascade out But when you did it with loving intention, these ripples were so much more powerful, and they were so much more far-reaching. They went further out and beyond the sphere and rippled into the light. So, which set off a whole nother, like fireworks almost. But so I was impressed with how important loving intention was. And so I also noticed that the things that in life that I had taken a lot of pride in, like becoming the chief engineer of Aloha, I thought, though that was something, that was like a legacy type of thing that I thought I'd built up in life, and it held very little significance in the life review.
Interesting.
But then I started, and all of this was crystal clear. So these multiple streams of consciousness that I was experiencing were all crystal clear because they were part of life that had manifested, were real, and were past tense. But then I started experiencing things, and at the time I didn't realize it, but I started experiencing my future. And in the future, it was a little hazier. It wasn't quite as crystal clear and sharp, but I was able to see like potentials. And if I went this way, it was brighter. If I went this way, it was a little foggier, not quite as bright. But I saw this core path of my future, basically, through multiple streams of consciousness still. But I was marching into the future, and it disoriented me a little bit because I didn't have any reference point as to what was going on.
Yeah, that must be tough because you're still trying to figure out what's going on while you're experiencing this intense experience.
Yes, exactly. So, and you're at the same time you're getting rid of this denseness of living a life. You're kind of.
That's crazy. That whole combination is just crazy.
It's quite intense. So anyway, I finally reached a point in my own future where the light itself, this infinite light surrounding the sphere, spoke, and it said, "This is not your time. You must return." I said, "No way."
You knew a good thing when you saw it, right?
I'm feeling loved. I've got a family I never knew, and I just there was no way. And so I argued. I argued what I perceived as God. I argued, and I said, "No, I'm not going back because I have a family. I'm loved, and that body that is in the ocean." To me was just cold and broken, and I really didn't have any desire to go back. And the light spoke to me one more time, and it said, "No, you must return. You have a purpose." Well, oh my gosh, that word purpose just resonated through my being. And when you're in this light, and when you're connected to this light, and to your light being, you're connected to a consciousness that's so much more than just yourself. Let me take a second here to just close the door.
That's all right, no problem. I'm curious to know more about the sense of purpose.
Well, that's just it. So I understood with this consciousness, I understood this purpose, and so. With acceptance, and I accepted, yes, I have this purpose. And with acceptance, I found myself back outside my body. Was still in the ocean, was still being tumbled and tossed. And I was outside it, but three of the light beings that originally greeted me were there with me. Watched as my body got tangled up in the bow line of the zodiac had wrapped itself around my right arm, and the bitter end was tapping my lifeless chest. And I was fascinated by this. I was just watching this, and I was trying to figure out how is the enormity of me, because my light body was so big compared to this physical body that I had to go into, and I was just trying to figure out how is the enormity of me going to fit in there. And the bow line snapped taut when a wave hit the rest of the wreckage of the Zodiac, because there was a little bit of air left in one of the pontoons, and it pulled my body up to the surface, and my body got tangled up with some of the wreckage, and the waves were pounding my body up against this wreckage, and it pushed some of that salt water out of my lungs. And when that happened, my soul family, the 3 members that were with me of my soul family, gave me a push, and I just resonated back into my body.
Wow.
And I always say, in fact, in my book, one of the taglines I have is, dying is hard, but returning to life is even more difficult. Because, I'm still a mile offshore in raging seas, and I just died and returned. I just drowned and was resuscitated. And
perhaps the most bizarre Heimlich maneuver ever invented.
Well, yeah, and my friends, they had all survived. The other guys that were in the boat had survived, and they were trying to find me. We're all experienced seamen, and we've all spent a lot of time. We know how to handle a bad situation. So they had rallied around. One guy had been able to hang on to a flashlight, and they'd all rallied around that flashlight, and they were looking for me. And I could hear them yelling my name, and I was, trying to answer, but when you're expelling salt water, it's a little, you can't talk very well, so I was squeaking and squawking. But they finally heard my feeble attempts, and they came over to me, and then we all had a mile to swim through raging seas to
God.
So that thing. Yeah.
So bad enough that you had to come back to this, but now with a energy depleted body, you have to swim a mile.
Yeah, and all the time I'm thinking purpose, because it was so clear in the light. And it's kind of interesting because when you do return, the light lingers. It's a part of you, and it stays with you. One thing I learned, and then I had a second experience, but I won't go into the second experience. It was so similar to the first one that. But in the second one, I observed that when we return to our body, we bring that light of our totality, of our true being. We bring a fragment of that light into this physicality that we live.
Mm-hmm.
But our greater totality is still there in the light, connected to that vastness of oneness, And so when I came back and I'm in the water and I'm thinking purpose, the light kind of lingers. And so I still had kind of a greater awareness of not just me, but of like everything that was going on around me. In fact, I was trying to warn one of the guys. In fact, it was the design engineer that was with us that night. He was trying to get to LAX, and that was the whole reason we were out there. And he was an ex-Marine, so he's very versed in adverse situation, and so he was hanging on to the gas can, and I kept yelling at him to let go of the gas can because it was a hard surface. And sure enough, the next wave came, and that gas can hit him right up under his chin and almost knocked him out.
Oh, my goodness.
I had to rescue him. So I had this awareness of, greater than just myself. And I even knew that my life vest was part of the problem because I was having trouble staying up.
Mm.
So I knew that there was something wrong, and I unbuckled my vest, and I looked, and the inside of it was shredded. It had dry rotted in the storage locker.
Oh, my goodness.
And so this old fiber-filled life vest had actually become saturated, with salt water, and it was actually what was dragging me down. And the minute I got rid of that, I was able to stay on the surface a little bit easier.
Oh, okay.
And be able to hang on. And then we all just kind of rallied around this wreckage of the Zodiac, the rubber Zodiac. We just kind of hung on to that, and we all swam together. Because I had a dislocated shoulder, because when that line pulled me up, it dislocated my shoulder. So I only had one hand that was any good, and so I just hung on to that Zodiac, and we kicked in. for a mile.
Wow, what an experience to go through that. A couple things came to me while you were telling your story. First of all, I think I missed early on. You said something was called the bitter end. What's the bitter end?
Oh, yeah, that played in my mind for quite a while. When you sailors take care of their lines quite a bit, and that's one thing because your rope or lines, as we call them,
right,
are crucial to your work. So rather than let the end of a line fray, you weave it back into itself, and it creates a bit of a knot on the end of the line. And so that end of the line is called the bitter end. Ah,
okay. And that's what was hitting up against your chest. All right.
And that was hitting my chest, was the bitter end. And to think about it, that okay, the life vest that was supposed to save me actually killed me, but I was saved by the bitter end.
Yeah. which leaves that name to have a rather bizarre double meaning in your case.
Yeah. I've always wanted to take like some copper wire or something and kind of braid it and strand it back just like a bitter end would look, and use that as a pendant. I really feel, or maybe I should have that tattooed, on my shoulder or something, a bitter end.
That's funny. Now, another thing you talked about was while you were with the beings of light, you talked to what you termed God, and God told you you had to come back, and the reason you had to come back was because you had a purpose. Now, does that mean you actually had no choice in the matter?
No. I think I could. If I hadn't accepted the purpose, I think I would have stayed.
Oh, okay.
But I accepted it because knowing the purpose, and being in that loving, compassionate, environment of pure light and pure love, and understanding the purpose of this life, I accepted it. I just accepted it. It was, to me, it was almost like no choice, but I did have a choice. I could have rejected the purpose, and I could have stayed.
Now, here's the tough question. What was the purpose?
Yes. Well, when you come back, I was haunted by what was the purpose. That's the exact same thing. What was this purpose, And it really, and the hard thing and the reason why I say it's harder to come back to life is when you come back to life, you come back to this dense, you no longer have that expansion, that the liberating expansion of having your total being a part of you. You're in this denser form where you only have a fragment of your light, and you have to try to channel back into that oneness periodically. We get glimpses, and I hadn't established that type of communication in my life before. And also, I was an engineer. So now that I'm back in this physical body, my mind is like assaulting me as to that was just, a hallucination, blah, 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 blah. It couldn't have been real. I tried to share it with my wife, and that was my first wife didn't understand it. And in fact, it actually scared her when I told her that I died. So I couldn't share it with my family. And on the ship, we did oceanographic research, and we did diving and sub work and stuff. It's very dangerous work, and so we put each other's lives in each other's hands every day, and so to share it with them was impossible for me. So I felt alone.
Go with that for a second. Why is it impossible?
Because death was taboo. It was a taboo subject with my mates on the ship.
Okay.
Because we put each other's lives in each other's hands.
So you didn't dare go there is what you mean?
Yeah, you couldn't go there because even when, like in the past, when we would have a close call, because I'd had close calls before. You can't be a commercial diver and not have a close call here and there.
Uh-huh.
And but usually you come back and you have this false bravado that guys kind of get, and you laugh it off and everything.
Right.
The interesting thing, that night, all of us, there wasn't one joke. We were all reflective and quiet and somber, and because we'd all faced our mortality, being, we all we all faced death. Some of us went a little further than others.
Yeah.
We all faced the chance of not making it.
And yet you still couldn't talk to them about it. That's really interesting.
Yeah. In fact, a lot of times they did query me about, Dave, you were gone for 12, 15 minutes. We couldn't find you.
That was my other question. How long were you dead?
Yeah, and they were, and I said, well, and I would cover it. I would cover it up. I would say things like, well, Neptune spit me back, and stuff like that. So I didn't address it because of my own fear, it was an internal fear of my own. And I lived like that for 11 years, but all the time I was haunted by, what's this purpose? So I was looking for purpose in everything, and I didn't and this whole experience didn't fit my worldview as an engineer, where I saw things as black and white, because suddenly this just didn't fit into my worldview. So I wanted to get past it, I wanted to forget it, and I wanted to get my old life back. But the funny thing kind of happens when you have spiritual. I like to lump these near deaths and all these kind of experiences into a single category and just call them spiritually transformative experiences.
Okay.
Because I've seen a lot of research recently that shows that you don't have to die to have an experience like this, and the after effects for people that have these experiences are pretty much similar whether you've died or not. So,
okay.
So, a spiritually transformative experience, if you have a receptive community after having one of these, you can go through an integration where you integrate this into your life a lot quicker. But whereas I felt isolated, and a lot of experiencers do feel isolated because they don't feel like they're in a community where they can share.
Right.
Then the integration takes a little longer. And I didn't realize it, but it did change me, because a couple things started happening. One, I started getting these intuitive knowings. And as an engineer, it kind of freaked me out. I didn't know what it was. But I would know things about equipment, about people, about future.
Give us an example.
Like, well, okay, I was on the ship. We were doing a job, and I suddenly knew, without any indication, none of the logs indicated there was any problems, or there was nothing there, but I knew that we were going to have a problem with this one reduction gear.
Wow.
And I had, and I radioed out when we were at a supply stop. I radioed out and got the parts on the deck before we got there, so that I had them on hand. And sure enough, we got out there, and then it failed, and I had everything I needed to work on and repair this thing.
That must be tough, though, to actually put out that request to a group of people that you've already said you can't share this kind of thing with. You have to have some way to get past your own limitations. Say, well, I'm going to put out the request anyway without letting them know what's really going on.
Yeah, well, it was kind of fortunate I was in charge of the budget. Being the chief engineer, I was in charge of
that helps.
Yeah, so I had to manage the budget, so I that was good. But and then people would query, like, geez, how did you know? And I said, oh, that comes with experience. Again, I would cover it up,
Well, you were true. I mean, it did come with experience.
It did, yeah.
Just more specific, that's all.
Tell what kind of experience. And then things about people, like I would know personal details about some of my shipmates, and things like that they hadn't conveyed to me, or someone else had, through rumor control, they hadn't conveyed to me or anything. So,
and that's probably a little bit more dicey. You probably had to be a little more careful about that stuff.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. And so and then I would test. But as an engineer, I didn't trust any of it at first. I would test it to see if this is, valid, veridical information that I'm receiving.
Right.
And and over time, like I said, I was isolated for over 11 years. Over time, I began to realize how valid this intuitive knowing is, and so I adopted it, and I brought it into my life, and I integrated it into my life. But I kind of on a very subtle way. And then I had a second experience that was very similar to the first one. And in the second experience, the light spoke to me in advance and told me to return to the light. And from that moment on, I started to hear spirit. It wasn't just intuitive knowings anymore. I would hear spirit. And so I thought of, and let me, everybody asks, what do I mean by when I say spirit? To me, my spirit communication is my communication back with my soul family.
Okay.
So they all have different flavors and different priorities as far as the different voices. And and here's another thing: when you suddenly had the second experience again, it kind of freaks you out when now you're hearing voices, talking to you, right?
Mm-hmm, sure.
And that's not something you want to share in public either. But I was fortunate enough this second time to run into a group of people and run into an organization, IANS, which is the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I ran into a guy. His name was Tom Sawyer. He's from Central New York area here, and that's his real name, Tom Sawyer.
What an appropriate name, though.
Yeah, well, he was in the very early days when Dr. Raymond Moody first coined the phrase near-death experience. He was one of the people in the very early research of near-death experiences. And so after the second experience, a person who witnessed me coming out of the second experience happened to be Tom Sawyer's best friend.
Oh, okay.
And so I kind of just started blah, blah, blah. Oh, my God, Richard, this happened to me. And Richard said, oh, you had a near-death experience, like it was no big deal, And it was like the doors opened for me because there was suddenly acceptance,
Right.
And so that was when I really feel integration started to happen. And
I got to interrupt you because I've been holding on to this question, and you said that everybody wants to know about what you mean by spirit. That's actually not what I wanted to know. What I wanted to know is, what do you mean you had to go back to the light?
Oh, I was I found this spiritual group. I still hadn't shared my experience with them, but I found this spiritual group, and we went. Actually, went to Sedona. I grew up in Sedona, and they went there on a spiritual retreat, and I went with them. And the first day they wanted to do a meditation, so I started what I knew as my meditation procedure, and the light came just as I was beginning my routine to get myself to a meditative state. The light came and it spoke to me and it said, return to the light, and I relived my entire near-death experience.
Oh my.
And there was no stopping it. And I kept reliving it for 3 days. And everything,
oh my goodness.
Everything would remind me. Because remember I had said I had seen...
You couldn't even get away with it if you tried. Away from it, I mean.
No. And this was my second NDE because I kept reliving it. And remember in the experience when I was talking about I saw my future. Mm-hmm. Well, in the second one, I'd lived 11 years. And so in that life review, the second time, I saw how much I had changed from the first experience till now, the second experience. And that fogginess was now crystal clear because I got to see all of which paths I did pick, which potentials I did pick.
I'm curious, what did you think about that change now that you saw it?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I didn't think I had changed.
Ah.
It was I didn't perceive myself as changing, but I saw that some of the things that I had adopted from the first experience was acceptance, tolerance, and truth, and they were not a part of my life prior to my near-death experience, the original experience. That I could accept myself, for this is who I am right now. I've got a lot of work to do, but this is who I am, and I can make myself a better person. Tolerance for other people and life situations, and then truth. That truth doesn't have to be hard and cold facts, black and white. That our personal truths are held within our heart. So those three things had become kind of my new mantra, from the first experience, and they started changing the way because they started to change my intention. And so my intention, whenever I was faced with a future potential, would go toward acceptance, tolerance, and truth. And so it started affecting change in my life.
Okay.
That was a long-winded explanation.
That's all right. I think I'll take you back to it one more time, though, because I was looking for one particular reaction. What did you think about that? How does that seem to you as you now study that and see that?
In the second experience, the change, or
yeah. And what's your reaction? I guess is what I'm looking for.
What was my reaction? Well, at first there was surprise, but also because acceptance, I was able to accept. Okay, I have changed. And I think from this point on, I can bring more into my life.
Oh, okay.
Because the rest of it, the light, the soul family, the love, especially the love that was overwhelming for me when I first came back. I didn't know what to do with that. I had put that all on a back shelf in my mind and had tried to forget it. And so after the second experience, it's like, I have to bring that out. I have to work with that. So that after the second experience, my feelings were, I need to work on this even more.
Did you like that reaction? Did you like what you were seeing change, or was it scary and keep it away from me?
It was scary, but
okay.
But it was one of those things that this is the right thing. Because it's kind of interesting, in our true being, in our being, we know what's right. Mm-hmm. It's like, that old Buddhist thing, you don't have to teach a bird to sing. They don't go to learn how to sing. We know how to sing, and we know what is right. Our heart recognizes it. So when I was faced with this, I recognized, and the purpose, of course, this wells up all that purpose again.
Right.
That, I need to follow this path even further. So this took me down a road, even further down a road, where I became, I actually quit my life at sea. I became the manager of a dialysis program because because these experiences bring out even more in your life where you feel like you need to be more of service to humanity.
Really?
And it's a very common theme with spiritually transformative experiences, that afterwards you feel like I need to be more of service. I need to help my fellow man. And so living and working offshore, 500 miles offshore 9 months out of the year, I felt like I really wasn't living up to my purpose and everything. So I quit my life at sea. I became a manager of dialysis programs here in central New York at St. Joseph's Hospital. Mm-hmm. And I felt like, and I was using my guidance, I was listening to Spirit, and I was developing that communication with Spirit and everything. And I felt...
It sounds like you'd actually come to terms with it to a large degree, too, because it wasn't something you wanted to keep away. You actually wanted to embrace it.
Yes, and I started trying to work with it. I tried to develop this communication and tried to discern which was Spirit communication and which was my monkey mind. Because at a certain point...
Your monkey mind, I love that.
Yeah, well, at a certain point, that in spirit, when you're walking along a spiritual path and trying to achieve some spiritual maturity, your ego and your monkey mind kind of at one point want equal billing. They want equal time. And so sometimes, my monkey mind would pretend it was Spirit. It would sound kind of like Spirit,
You'd almost fake yourself out.
Almost fake myself out, and it's kind of a funny thing. So I started doing some silversmithing and stuff like that, because I found that when we all have within us something creative, and I found that when we work with our creativity, that we're on that threshold of Spirit communication. We're at the doorway when we're working with our creativity, and it doesn't take once we delve into that into creativity, we open that door, and which allows that inspiration. What is inspiration? It's communication from our higher true being. So I found that when I worked with my creativity, that I was able to learn, I was able to discern what was Spirit communication and what was the monkey mind. Because sometimes they can be pretty subtle. Sometimes they're very loud.
What do you think the trick is, though, for discerning them?
Well, I think a lot of times for me, I feel it in my heart. I actually feel an actual physical sensation, okay, in my heart.
Okay.
I know other people that feel it in the palms of their hands, the crown of their head, the back of their neck. Other people feel it in different ways, but I think we all need to like tune in
Sure.
to find what is our trigger. What is our what sensation do we have when we're listening to spirit?
Mm-hmm.
Because we all have some kind of sensation, physical sensation. We're physical beings living a physical life. We need to recognize that, accept it, and move on. But
my wife likes to say that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience.
yeah, exactly. And we're trying to recall our spiritual being.
Mm.
We're trying to recall that spiritual being.
Very cool stuff. Of course, this show is primarily focused on the law of attraction and LOA, but we apply that to everything in life, so that's why we do all this life experience stuff in the interviews. I'm curious to know, one of the big controversies, if you will, that surrounds LOA and the people who are so doubtful of it and distrusting and skeptical is that they say, well, there's absolutely no way it can be true because there are people who have horrible things happen to them. There's the Holocaust, there's 9/11, there's all this stuff. There's absolutely no way I'm going to go about blaming the people who are the victims of this stuff. And I won't go into what my answer to that would be because I don't want to color your thinking, but I'm wondering, do you feel like you attracted these two near-death experiences, or did they just kind of happen to you?
No, they were meant to be. I really do believe they were meant to be. In fact, I can tell you that I firmly believe that when we have bad things happening to me, because I had this all led up, all of these two experiences helped me to create a more balanced lifestyle, living in balance, developing I just was beginning to develop what I call mindfulness. So these experiences propelled me. Through suffering, sometimes we have some of the greatest growth.
Mm.
And they helped me. And each experience built upon the next. So even though a lot of times it seems like, okay, I've had this bad experience and it can't possibly get worse, and then, oh my God, it does. It gets actually worse. But through each one of those steps, you learn something. You learn something about yourself, about your own strength, about your own fortitude. And it helps pull you up out of that mire, out of that muck. So I actually, later in life, in 2000, I was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Mm.
And the cancer was so bad, it metastasized into my spine. It ate away 2.5 bones of my thoracic, and my spine collapsed.
Oh, God.
And so, but what I had learned and how I had developed this spiritual communication helped me to get through, and it was stage 4. I was diagnosed as stage 4 lung cancer, and which is, the survivability of that is astronomical.
Yeah, you're pretty much assumed you're going to be passing any time now.
Yep. In fact, they weren't even going to treat me. They were just going to put me on morphine and Percocet and just make me happy.
Right.
And I said no. If I can say no to the light, I can say no to the doctor.
Amazing how empowering that is.
And so, and part of this is because in that life review, when I saw my future, I also saw I was going to have cancer, and I saw, I saw the potential of cancer, but I also saw the potential of living past the cancer. Mm. And so I was at a choice. That was one of those crossroads where it was like the first thing I thought, I can go home.
Mm.
I can go home. This cancer could take me home.
Yeah.
Which wasn't a bad thing.
No, but based on what you've been talking about, it sounds like it's wonderful.
But purpose.
Yeah, that
Spirit
haunting purpose thing again.
Yeah, purpose. Spirit was like, ding, ding, ding. Here it is. This is what it's all about. Okay. And so I knew that I knew that I was going to survive this cancer without a doubt. I knew. And so I said no to the doctors, and I put together because I was manager at dialysis, I was able to talk to doctors and put together a healthcare team that I felt kind of supported what I wanted to do. And we put together a healthcare plan, and within 6 months I was cancer-free.
Wow. Wow.
I still had a broken spine, but I was cancer-free. And it took another year to convince them that I was going to live, because they kept thinking the cancer was going to come back.
Yeah.
I used a balance of traditional and holistic approaches, and because I used my spirit guidance to guide me to what I needed.
That's what you really use more than anything else.
Yes, and intention. This is where you start to. This is where you need to apply loving, heart-centered intention in what we do in life. Remember I told you how those were the biggest ripples? Well, I felt I had to bring that energy to bear to overcome this challenge, because I didn't think of the cancer as a fight. I hate to use that type of terminology. To me, it was a challenge that we were going to overcome. So I brought that loving, heart-centered type of energy, those giant ripples, to bear to overcome this challenge. So I learned, and this really applies to the law of attraction, that
oh, absolutely. You're expressing the essence of LOA, but go ahead. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Exactly, is that when you we want stuff in life. I mean that, but
sure.
When you apply heart-centered, loving intention to your future, or and visualize your future in that way, then it starts to manifest. It's like the universe starts to align itself, and so that you can achieve that purpose, that goal in life. And so my purpose now, I've come to learn through spirit communication, through all of these experiences, I had to walk that path with the blinders on. I had to walk that path, not knowing what the purpose was, but looking for it, to get to the point where I am now, where I overcame the cancer. Because now I can work with terminal patients that are facing death. I can work because I've died, I've come back, I've faced terminal disease, I've gone through chemo, radiation, and all the suffering that goes with a terminal diagnosis like that. So I can talk to them one-on-one because I've been there. And then but to tell you the truth, I do work with experiencers, or I do work with cancer patients, but I more work with experiencers, people that have had transformative experiences and are trying to get a handle on it. Because I really don't want experiencers to go through, and that's what the book I wrote, Voyage of Purpose, is all about, this transformation and all of the challenges that we face when we have a spiritually transformative experience, because there's a lot of very common challenges. And so what I try to do is I try to help experiencers. I lead a local IANS group, was the International Association of Near-Death Studies, and through them I have two groups. One's a very public group where we bring in near-death experiences and people that have had spiritually transformative experiences, and we have public, presentations about the subject for public education. So I feel the more that people are aware of these types of experiences, the more that we get the word out about these experiences. And you don't have to believe these experiences, but if you can believe how real they are to the experiencer, if you can just take one step, then you can respect the experiencer for what they're going through. Because a lot of experiencers still face a lot. I mean, society has a tough time accepting these experiences as real. Well, no, I don't care if you accept them as real. I believe skepticism is a very healthy thing to have in your life. But if you can just accept how hyper real they are to the experiencer, and how they challenge our lives, that we need to integrate these. We need to be healthy and whole, and to live a balanced, whole life again. Because what these experiences do is they fragment our knowing. We suddenly realize that we have a spiritual component and a human component, and we're trying to weave them together into a wholeness. That's what most spiritually transformative experiencers are really trying to do. So
Mm-hmm.
I work a lot with experiencers now, and I don't try to say, oh, you had a Kundalini experience, you had a near-death experience, you had a spiritual awakening, you had an exceptional human experience, or I just lump it all together. We're experiencers, and
Sure.
it's kind of funny. Back in 2004. The National Opinion Research Center, the University of Chicago, did a survey that showed that 35.7% of the adult population in the United States have had some form of spiritual or religious transformative experience.
Wow.
That is over a third of the adult population in the United States, and you never hear about it.
No, well, occasionally, more often lately, but you're right, it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Couple thoughts, that last bit that you were talking about. First, you mentioned that when you are in this mode of making these changes and so forth, that the universe is aligning itself and is basically setting things up and getting the light going and so forth. Did you also see that from the other side when you were on the other side, or is that only something you've experienced on this side? Because I'm wondering if you saw it on the other side, what it looks like.
Yeah, I did. And it was in the future part where I saw multiple potentials.
Oh, okay.
Because in our future, we have a lot of potentials already kind of aligned. And then this is where our free will comes to play.
Okay.
We have free will to choose which path we're going to.
I promise you won't have to do a grammar test here.
Yes, thank you, because I was terrible in English. Not one of my strong subjects. Math and engineering, man, I was solid. But English, terrible. And you would never be able to read my writing. Thank goodness for computers, right?
I'm sympathetic. My handwriting is totally illegible.
Well, yeah. So, but anyway,
I can't even read it.
I get sidetracked easily. These potentials are what's, the universe aligning itself in advance to give us the most empowering path available to us. But we can also choose the less empowering path.
Sure. But what does that actually look like? I mean, there you are. You're on the other side. You're experiencing this light being experience, and you're seeing this future view where stuff is aligning itself in certain ways depending on what choices you make. What does that look like?
See, this is where it gets really hard to explain.
Yeah, I know. I'm asking you to use words for something that doesn't have a words-based background to it.
Exactly, because, I'm trying to express something otherworldly with the physical world that we have,
Right,
and
which is crazy.
It doesn't exist here.
But it's what I've got, so that's what I work with.
I know. So think of orbs of energy, and you have a pathway amongst all of these different orbs, and they have energy, which is vibration, which is song, which is light, which is everything, composed in each and every one of these different orbs, and there's like galaxies and galaxies of it ahead of you, and
okay.
And so you're trying to forge a pathway through that, and you have to kind of set your path. You have to put one potential in front of the other, and so you have to bring them into being, and we do that through our intentions, and so we have to.
So even on the other side, it's a very interactive experience.
Yeah, well, and the neat thing is you normally do this with your soul family.
Mm-hmm.
You do this together.
Yeah.
And so you have, because in a family, we all have different strengths. We all have different qualities about our being, Some of us are stronger with some things than others,
Mm-hmm.
And so together, our diversity makes us stronger. And we've never embraced that here in this physical world.
Mm.
That our diversity is our greatest strength.
Mm.
We don't see that. But I saw how with my soul family we could plot a course, and and then what I saw was the potentials that had the most empowerment. They shined a little brighter. That's my indicator. And this is just my perception, but it's like, so when I'm looking, because I've learned now that I can go back into the light. Through other experiencers, they've kind of, other experiencers taught me that I can return to the light. And that
you can do it on cue, so to speak, whenever you want to do it.
Yeah, and that I can look toward our future. And I've been giving talks recently about my time in the light, and then the future for humanity, because especially with 2012, everybody's concerned about it.
Oh yeah, we're only 14 days away from the end of the Mayan calendar. The world's going to come to an end, right?
No way. Yeah, it's the end of a calendar. What do you do when you get a calendar?
You get a new calendar.
So yeah, no big deal. It's just, but it is the end of an era. It's the beginning. Yeah. But we see, that's the problem. We think of it as the end of something. It's not. It's the beginning of something.
That's cool.
Yeah, we got to turn our thoughts around. We got to embrace our differences, and we've got to face a new beginning that it's going to be a little challenging, because a lot of people are rooted in their routine and really hate change. But change, but that's another thing we need to recognize. Change occurs all the time.
Oh yeah. Well, we're all living lives where we're constantly bounding up and bouncing up against our own limitations, self-imposed limitations, and we're trying to learn how to get around them. What you're just describing is really no different from that. It's the pain of going through the change of how do you get around those limitations you put in your own way.
Yeah, and it's happening faster and faster, isn't it?
It is. Yes, in a very, very big way.
Yeah.
As you're describing all this, I'm noticing, despite the disclaimers about how difficult it is to put it in words, you're doing pretty good at coming up with the words. I'm wondering, how long did it take to come up with the words? Is it something that developed over that first 11-year period after the first experience, or is it something that's happened since, or how long did it take?
Well, you see, that's where working with other experiencers helps a lot. Because when people have these experiences, you're right. That's one of the very first challenges is, how do I express this? The second challenge is, who do I express it to?
Yeah, it's almost the first one, really.
That is safe and isn't going to judge me.
That's right.
And then how do you deal with the negative reactions? So I mean, that's all just one challenge of sharing the experience. And you have to also, even before that, you have to accept your own return from these experiences and face that there was a radical shift in your worldview.
Right.
So those are the initial challenges that experiencers have to come with. But what's very helpful for experiencers is to seek out other experiencers. And if you're the person, like, say, an experiencer comes to you and wants to express their experience and share their experience with you, the best thing that you can do for them is to listen. Don't interject. Don't try to tell them what their experience means.
Right.
Because a lot of times what happens to experiences is people hijack your experience.
Yeah.
They try to tell you what this experience is.
No, this is what you really felt.
Yeah. I know who that was. Those were spirit guides. And,
right.
Those were angels and all this stuff. They start interjecting all this stuff into you, when it's really the experiencer has to distill this out and has to integrate this into their life and find the meaning in it themselves,
And to me, that's the much more interesting part of the story.
It is. You see, but it's kind of funny. A lot of times when I'm talking about these subjects, people want to hear the experience. They really don't give a hoot about what happens afterwards.
Interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. When you're in a group of people, they want to hear the experience.
And I do. I want to hear the experience, but I'm surprised that they don't want to hear what comes afterward. I would think the afterward part would be almost even more interesting.
It is, especially to people that have had experiences.
I suppose that's what the difference is, isn't it?
Yeah, a big part. And then you have to instill these values into your life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the next step.
Right.
And you have to adjust to these new heightened sensitivities, because not only do you have like a lot of psychic phenomena where people become mediums and psychics and healers. I mean, these are all great gifts, but you also come back with sensitivities. Like a lot of experiences are sensitive to light, to sound, to medications, they become hypersensitive to their environment.
Interesting.
And so that can be a challenge too, And then the greatest one is, because it's very common that you feel this sense of needing to be of service and that you have a higher purpose, to find that and instill it into your life. So I mean, that's the grand end challenge that a lot of experiences. But once you go through these phases of these experiences, you start to live a more whole, rich life, and that's when you see the power of the law of attraction, because you begin to live it. You begin to live in a more mindful, more heart-centered, with loving intention as your core, and you start to that type of practice takes time. It's like exercise. You have to develop it, and the more you do it, the more it becomes your nature. The more it becomes, like you could have your own life review if you just at night just say, let me look at my day. What did I do? Well, I didn't handle that too well, but I'll do better next time. And then the next time a similar occurrence happens, you'll say, oh, I'll catch it a little sooner. I caught it, but not quite at the moment I should have. Next time I'll be a little quicker. And each time you do it, you start to practice more of that loving intention. The more it becomes a part of your being, a part of you just live. And that's when life starts to just unfold. The way I live my life now is I let it unfold. And I was in an interview not that long ago, and the person at the end asked me, Dave, would you want to, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And it's like, it's funny, but I don't, because I'm so enjoying allowing life to unfold that I really don't look at my personal life and my future.
Eckhart Tolle would really approve of that.
Oh, yeah.
He would.
Yeah, living in the present, right? Well, yeah, to me, living in the present is allowing it to just unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were describing the fact that people who have not gone through this kind of experience are the ones who have more trouble with it, I'm asking myself, why am I so receptive to what you're talking about? Because I've never really had a near-death experience.
No, but I bet you've had a spiritually transformative experience.
I've had a few of them.
I was feeling that, yeah. I was feeling that when we were talking about your questions. So.
And in fact, the one that comes to my mind is when my dad passed in 2008. He had passed from symptoms related to Parkinson's, and it was rather rough for him at the end. But within a few days after his passing, my sister, who has, for a number of years now, realized she has had some small psychic ability that she's been trying to develop. She and my mom were in church, at the church that they all attended, and during that sermon that was being given that day, she started getting this massive headache. She had been through some spiritual training that led her to realize this could be contact from somebody. So her first thought, of course, was, Dad, is that you? And she got back an answer. And there was a short conversation that went on between the two of them. One of the things she said when she realized it was him, she was all excited. She said, what's it like on the other side? And one word came back. The word was festive. Now, she told me this story. She told all of us in the family this story. And that word all by itself was validating, because I can assure you the one word my sister would never use is festive. She's too much of a dramatist. She was a theater major, and she's written wonderful plays. She actually wrote a play about the love affair between Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, which we're hoping is going to become a big hit. But the point is, she's very much into drama. The last thing she's going to talk about is festive. That's what I call a dad word.
Yeah.
So that was the validation for me that it was my father. And then not immediately after, maybe, 6 months to a year after, somewhere like that, I was kind of missing my dad. I actually had done very well with his passing because for me, it was more of a relief. I had done more of my grieving before he died than afterward. But I was missing him, and I kind of wanted to reach out to him. So my wife said, well, no, why don't you try to reach out to him through a dream sometime? I said, well, you know me. I never remember my dreams. I'm not that kind of a person. But sure enough, I ended up having a dream where I met my dad. I don't know why. We met on a college campus. I have no idea why. But it was on a college campus, and it was one of these campuses that had hills on it. And I knew it was him. And we embraced and we talked. I can't tell you exactly what happened, but I remember that. So I guess that's the closest I can think of to what you were describing. Not the same kind of experience, not the beings of light thing and all that.
No, but afterlife communication, or after death communication, ADCs, and our spirit, they're transformative experiences as well. I mean, that is an after death communication that you had through dream. I mean,
yeah.
That's perfect. There's a Bill Guggenheim and his wife Jody wrote a book, Hello from Heaven, and they talk about this type of communication, and might be someone you might be interested in having on the show.
Yeah, I'll check into that. Very good. Well, we've kept you here for quite some time, and you've been telling this wonderful story. I don't even want to cut it off, but I know you have other things you have to be doing too.
That's right. Yeah.
You have your life to pursue. But tell us again the full name of the book. I know it's available on Amazon, but what's the full name?
Yeah, it's Voyage of Purpose. Is if you go Amazon, Kindle, Nook, any of those. The whole title is Voyage of Purpose: Spiritual Wisdom from Near Death Back to Life.
And you actually have a website for it, too.
Yes, there's a website, voyageofpurpose.com. But to tell you the truth, we're transitioning because my wife's got another book, and I've got a book coming out, another book in the pipeline.
Oh.
And
can you give us a taste?
The other book is going to be about reflections for spiritual awakening. I haven't got a working title for it yet, but it's going to be, how to bring that mindfulness into our day-to-day life and stuff. And my wife has a book that's coming out in May. It's called Soul Soothers.
Ooh.
Mini meditations for everyday life, where you actually instill meditation into your waking day. It's kind of a neat book, neat concept. And all of these have been published by Findhorn Press. I don't know if you're aware of Findhorn, but they're that community in Scotland that started a holistic community over there. It started with gardening and everything.
I wasn't aware of it, no.
It's an amazing community. There's a huge history in it that started back in the 60s. And they have their own publishing company that for spiritual type of, and so they distribute books, globally. It's all English speaking. And we just got picked up, our book's going to be in Spanish. It's picked up by Voyage of Purpose just got picked up by a publisher in Barcelona.
Fantastic.
And they're translating it as we speak.
That is very, very exciting.
But my other website is dharmatalks.com.
Dharma Talks. Mm-hmm. Spell out Dharma for people who don't know it. DharmaTalks.com. Okay. And what's Dharma Talks about?
Dharma Talks is kind of it brings together all of my projects.
Okay.
That's the one where you'll find my books, and Cindy's books will be there too. We're also creating another website. It's called Spiritual Simplicity. Spiritual Simplicity Books. SpiritualSimplicityBooks.com. Okay. But we're just beginning to work on that one because we feel that this is this whole. I wasn't going to write this book. This was another one of those guided type of things, and the last thing I thought it would get published. After I wrote it, I didn't think it would get published. And so this is another one of those where Spirit told me, and I listened and I did it. And
what's it like to get that message to do something that you think is a really bad idea and you do it anyway?
Oh, I argue with Spirit all the time. It's like, because Spirit tells me to do things, it's like, I don't want to do that. No. Are you kidding me? That's not, I don't do that kind of thing, So I argue with Spirit all the time, but Spirit wins.
Oh, that sounds so sad the way you say it.
No, it isn't. It's really good. I enjoy it. In fact, I kind of enjoy our banter sometimes. In fact, I know our time is very short, but I'll just really quick here. One time Spirit was like just nagging me almost. Spirit never is negative. It's always very positive and empowering, but it's one way to recognize Spirit. But Spirit was continually reminding me that I needed to develop more communication, wanted me to share my experience. And so finally, after I had said no 100 times, I finally sat down with full conviction and sincerity. I said, okay, Spirit, if anyone asks me to share my experience, I won't say no. And I said that very heartfelt and with loving intention in my reply. And Spirit was completely satisfied. But my monkey mind was thinking, ha, gotcha. I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm not going to advertise, so nobody's going to know to ask. Right? Within 2 weeks, I get a phone call asking me to come to Columbus, Ohio to give a talk to this group.
Oops.
And yeah, it was crazy. And it was like, oh my God, I don't know how you did it, Spirit, but you got the word out somehow. So it's just.
Meanwhile, your monkey mind is saying, rats foiled again.
Yeah, right. Well, it was like, who gets the last laugh? So anyway, I enjoy. I don't do that anymore, though. That was a long time ago. But
that's a great story, though. David Bennett, thank you so much for joining us here on LOA today. It has been absolutely enjoyable and enlightening, and your story is wonderful. I'm glad that Spirit talked you into telling it because it's great.
Thank you, Walt. It's great being here.
We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.